good, isn't it?
It is good.
It really is good.
Yeah, yeah. Camera rolling. Okay, action. Could you summarise for us what you understand by the concept of life extension?
I would summarise the concept of life extension very simply by saying that we want to extend human lifespan, the healthy, active, vital part of it, out as far as we possibly can. And that's entirely what life extension is about. We simply want to remove aging and keep us as young and as healthy for as long as is possible.
Great.
Okay, can I just stop one moment? I'm picking up something. Is it this computer equipment?
Yeah, it's probably.
Is it possible to be switched on for it?
I'll have to go through a little procedure. Just a minute. That's not breakable, is it?
Oh no, it's just a bit of old cling film, really.
Downside by those labels there's a big switch at the back. If you just throw it one way, all the lights go out. No. Can you see it? It's just an on and off switch down the side of the computer.
Down this
It's just at the back. It's a real good
I got it.
It's a real brilliant place to put it.
Oh yes.
Yeah. They're called Opus. I think they should be called Opus. I mean, basically they're good machines, but why don't they put the on-off switch on the front? Why? But hardly any of them do they? All the switches are at the back of the monitor or wherever. Exactly. You want me to say that again now, do you?
If you don't mind, sorry.
If I can remember it, I will.
Right, could you summarise?
Do you want me to talk to Martin, or do you want me to talk to the camera?
I think better to talk to Martin, actually. The only thing is that
Action. Could you summarise for us what you understand by the concept of life extension?
I would summarise the concept of life extension in a very simple way. It's simply us making the human body last as long as possible in a vital, healthy fashion. In other words, achieving a very, very long life in a healthy, disease-free state.
Great. What chief lessons has science taught us in recent decades about the ageing process?
Well, the first chief lesson that we have learned from science in recent decades about the ageing process is we don't know what the ageing process is. And yet every one of us that's ever been born and is alive now is undergoing these changes. Real research didn't begin on the ageing process until back in the 40s. And they found then, a man whose name escapes me for the moment, a very important experiment showed that if you reduce the calorific intake of animals but maintain their nutritional levels at a high level, their lifespans were expanded in some cases by a factor of 20 to 30%. In the longer lived animals in those experiments, some of them went on to live half as long again as the animals who were allowed to eat what they wanted. But in the main, we have a period at the moment in ageing research where there are about 6 different theories as regards what causes ageing. Like all things, probably no one of them is going to completely answer the whole thing. But that's about as far, the things that we do know now, that's about as far as it's gone. It's very experimental.
Right, thank you. What can be done to slow down this process? That's ageing.
I wish we knew what we could do to slow down the ageing process, because we'd all be doing it. If we look at the various theories of what causes ageing, free radical activity in the body, for instance, is supposed to be a major factor. You can take certain nutrients that will stop free radical activity or inhibit free radical activity. There are some very high-profile American exponents of this who take massive amounts of different chemicals, including vitamins, nutrients, prescription drugs, food preservatives, and unfortunately in the 8 or 10 years that they've had this extraordinarily high profile, they look as though they're aging at exactly the same rate, if not faster, than the rest of us. But we don't know, you see, and I mean, all we do know is what will happen to people if you don't take some action. You will grow old, you will become diseased and crippled, and you'll probably die slowly over a period of the last 10 years of your life with all sorts of pain. If you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you'll contract a terminal disease and die very quickly in pain. So we know what happens if you don't try and interfere with the aging process. So essentially, we, as life extensionists, really have nothing to lose. We're all under a death sentence anyway.
Okay. What sort of treatment do life extension people recommend for this purpose?
Well, as I explained very briefly, with the treatments that are available, you can go from what I consider to be the very unusual and extremely bizarre, where they go out and they kill sheep and lambs freshly in a field in Switzerland, and they remove the fetal cells from pregnant sheep and they bring them indoors and they inject them into human beings. Many famous people are supposed to have gone through this type of procedure. There's no evidence to suggest that it works, although there's a lot of evidence to suggest that having a few weeks in a Swiss clinic where your every whim is catered for is extremely beneficial, and you probably look a little younger because you're relaxed. Other treatments extend. There has been a major breakthrough, very early stages, with a drug called Deprenyl. Although it's been around since 1968 and it's been used throughout Europe to treat Parkinson's disease, it does appear to interfere beneficially with dopamine production in the brain, which is related with aging, sexual performance, depression. This drug at a very, very low level, you're talking about 10 milligrams a week in humans, has been used in experiments on animals and has greatly extended their lifespan. Many life extensionists are now taking between 10 and 15 milligrams of this prescription drug a week, just because all the side effects are beneficial. It's absolutely non-toxic at dosages of 3 and 4 times those levels. It's a very good calculated risk. Other people are starving themselves and taking lots of vitamins, going back to the 1940s experiments with animals, in the period that the longer you take to consume the calories, the longer your heart beats. There is an equation that actually shows that mammals appear to have an allocated number of heartbeats per calorie consumed. The faster you consume the calories, i.e. sumo wrestlers, who live to be about 52 if they're lucky, the quicker you die. The longer you take to consume those calories, the longer you live. So people are doing that, being injected with sheep cells, taking all sorts of nutrients and food preservatives.
Okay, wait, no, just one thing actually, Paul. It's just that because the mic's so close, it's picking it up when you're tapping your hand. I'm sure it'll be okay though. I mean, it's nothing, it's just once or twice you just hit a little knock.
I'll take my shoe off and hit the table like Khrushchev later.
Yes, that's good. At least we'll know what it is.
Sorry, it's just me, it's the way I am,
Oh, don't worry.
I'm deliberately restricting the
that's alright. Well, Magnus
the
Pies
history
did well
on
on TV.
Well, he did for a while, yeah.
Yes.
What happened to him?
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
I don't know, I haven't seen him much.
Was he ever alive?
Good question. Actually, Mark, do you just want to adjust the mic so it's pointing more towards Paul's mouth?
How are we doing? Is this all right? I mean,
excellent. Superb answers, and
are they?
Of interest.
I'm trying to keep it simple. It really isn't simple.
No, I'm sure. What is it like?
And then when you've gone away, I'm going to think, there's 10 things I've missed.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's not bad. I was just thinking actually the mic itself. Could you kind of adjust it, the direction?
On the level or not? Is that all right?
That sounds okay. Can I just actually see if we can just? Yeah, that looks like it's pointing in the right direction. I mean,
do you want to bring it
I
forward?
think that's right. No, I don't think we'll be able to get any further forward than that. I think that's fine. I think we should be able to proceed now.
Want to make it higher? Or?
But to be honest, now we know because now we got that early bit. If it sounds sort of louder or something, it'll jar a bit. So now we've got it like that. We might as well carry on.
Sure.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, action. What are the conclusions of scientific evaluation of life extension programs?
The conclusions of scientific evaluation of life extension programs are entirely unproven, because for a human life extension program, of course, you'd have to do something for the lifespan of a human, and to evaluate it scientifically, we'd none of us be around to do that. So all you can do is you can do animal experiments. Some are undergoing the nutritional experiments with monkeys, which is over a much shorter period. Some involve dogs, which again you could be talking a 13-year wait before we can scientifically evaluate whether or not that particular aspect was correct. Most of these experiments are done with fairly short-lived animals. Something that even the Animal Liberation Front might approve of, because they're actually trying to extend the life of these animals and being very successful in some cases. So mainly the scientists are saying, well, this appears to work in mice, this appears to work in rats, even many experiments have been done with fruit flies with a lifespan of 4 or 5 days, and things have worked there. Whether they'll work in more complex organisms like you or I remains to be seen. None of us, if we're interested in living longer, can afford to wait for that. You have to stay at the vanguard of what's going on and make your own choices in a libertarian way, taking on responsibility for your own life, your own death.
Thank you. How and why did you get involved with life extension and set up a company for that purpose?
I don't know. I got involved in it because I've always had an abhorrent distaste of death. Even as a child, I would sit around and try and imagine what it would be like to go to heaven and live forever and never want for anything. And my mind would spin wildly, and I could never make sense. It still does when I think of it. It's incredibly boring. Essentially, I can sum up how and why I got involved in this business in a cliche kind of way. I do not believe in life after death, but far more importantly, I do not believe in death after life.
Thank you. What is the relationship between life extension and libertarianism?
What is the relationship between life extension and libertarianism? I don't even know if there is a relationship between life extension and libertarianism. I don't even know if a great percentage of our customers are libertarians. Whether it's an accident that a great number of people who are prominent in the life extension movement are libertarianism, it probably isn't an accident, because being a libertarianism essentially says, I want control over my whole life. I want it to be free of interference. The greatest interference in life is death. The greatest choice you could have as a libertarian would be, for me, would be able to choose when I want to die, if I want to die, not have it imposed on me. I mean, is being born such a great crime that it has to carry a death sentence? That seems extremely unfair to me.
Thank you. What are the main criticisms of the life extension movement, and how would you reply to these criticisms?
The main criticisms to the life extension movement is, of course, it doesn't work, it won't work. Like every other business, it carries its fair share of charlatans who appear to be selling products, promoting the hell out of them in the short term, trying to sell bucketfuls of them, and of course all the bad publicity that goes with that, which tarnishes everything. You have to answer every individual criticism on an individual basis. The main criticism that I could think you could level at life extension is well, you might be wasting your time because you don't know if anything you're going to do is work. But I covered that in an earlier question. We don't know that anything we do is going to work, certainly, but we do know what will happen if we don't try. And to me, for me, if I die, I think the universe ends, and that's that. Now, that doesn't particularly terrify me, but I don't see it as a goal to be desired.
Thank you. Hi David, that's the questions as written.
Okay, that's good. I was just going to ask one thing I was thinking. Do you want to make a comment about cryonics as well?
No, I thought you'd interviewed some cryonicists.
Well, we haven't as yet. That's probably something we might look at. Obviously, the thing is, the more we look into things which aren't directly connected with, as it were, political and economic aspects. If we life extension obviously is somewhat relevant, and that's obviously why it's important to have you in it. If we also have somebody who's involved with cryonics, and perhaps have somebody who might be interested to say karate or something, self-defense, somebody might say,
yes.
Well, that's to do with it.
Well, it can be. It can. Well, that's something to do with life extension, possibly, if you're beating off an attacker.
Yeah, that's right. That's quite the case.
Okay.
If that's okay.
I can't remember the question.
Okay, so what if we die? What happens if we die? What options are left open to a life extensionist? At the moment, there's only, I suppose there's two, but they both revolve around the same thing, and that is having the remains stored at an extraordinarily low temperature in order that the body would not decay, and that basically you, without the electrical spark of life inside you, can remain until something like nanotechnology, or some science unknown to us now but comes in the future, can revive us. You can achieve this in two ways. You can take a relatively cheap option and be buried in the permafrost and hope that these breakthroughs come within about 60 years, because within 60 to 80 years your body would have deteriorated to such a degree there probably wouldn't be enough of you as you remember you to be revived. Or you can join up with one of the three, I think there's three still, cryonics organisations, all based in America, who will take your remains and suspend them in liquid nitrogen, which virtually stops the decay of the body. It's almost imperceptible, the actual decay of the body. It's a nice clean way, it doesn't rely on electricity. They simply keep you in a dewar and they fill it up with liquid nitrogen, which is taken from the air, which when it's finished with dissipates back into the air. It's extremely clean, it's non-polluting, it's relatively cheap to do, although preparing the body is quite expensive, and the costs for this go from anything from about $30,000 up to I think about $180,000, depending which company you sign with. And as a kind of last resort insurance policy, my family and I are signing up with the Cryonics Institute of Michigan later on this year. We're just making the final trust arrangements now, and we are taking the cheapest possible route, which is not permafrost, it's still liquid nitrogen suspension, with the man who wrote the book Prospective Immortality, who started the cryonics movement in 1964, Robert Ettinger. That's it.
Great, that's fine.
I don't know if the other thing is, of course, he's written a couple of books, and these are some of the books that have been written about life extension and what might be done, but there's quite a number of them.
Right.
Right. What do you see as the social implications of life extension?
Well, I see several aspects of the social implications of life extension. The main one that's levelled at me by people, which I suppose goes back to the criticism question in a way, is that what about the overpopulation problem? I just dismiss it out of hand and I don't really give it any credence, because with or without life extension we're going to have a population explosion, and I think we have to come to terms with that irrespective of whether we have life extension or not, and I do hope that we do have life extension. I see more positive side to it in a sense, in that I think people might start acting more responsibly. I think that if people realise that if they do something really silly, they could be throwing away immortality, they might make better decisions than on this very short-term basis where we all live under the sentence of death. Whether we care to admit it or think about it, most of us push it to the back of our minds most of the time. But you could get people making better decisions about even the planet we live on, although I think ultimately that most life extensionists will explore the universe, and we can't do it without vastly increased lifespans. So I think that the two go hand in hand, and we may be even taking control of our own evolution in a respect. But I think people would make better decisions. They wouldn't dump so much garbage on the planet if they thought they were still going to be walking around in it 200 years from now. Whereas if they don't think they're going to be here in 60 years, it's a very short-term expediency movement. But I have to sum it up at the end of this just to say that in the final analysis, I don't really care about population explosion, and I don't care how many people have got life extension, so long as I'm one of them.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh yes, okay, I think that's...
Action. So has life extension been around for a while then, or is it a new thing?
Well, the actual concept of people in the past who actually want to live longer, yes, I mean, it's been around for a long time. You can even go back to the Egyptians, who were practicing, if you like, an early form of cryonics by trying to mummify people. Of course, they had a major drawback in some of their surgical things, like where they drew the brain out through the mouth and threw it away. But the essential thing was still there. They were trying to preserve the body for a return, essentially, to an earthly life. More recently, we've got books like How to Prolong Life by Dr. Lacey Evans. This was written in 1885, where he's dispensing such good advice as breathe clean air by getting rid of the gas lamps in your home and replace them with newfangled electricity. Probably good advice for the time. Interesting book written after or during the First World War, called Human Life and How It May Be Prolonged to 120 Years, written by a doctor. Again, dispensing good advice from some of the things he'd learnt during the horrors of the First World War. Nothing but common sense, really, but interesting in that one of the latest books to come out of America is called The 120-Year Diet. So we're still looking at 120 years as being one of the optimum attainable goals for a healthy human being. There has been a massive stuff, certainly since the mid-1970s, being produced on life extension, and I've got some of the books here to show you. My favourite, one of the earliest ones of the practical how-to books to come out of America, written by a man called John Mann, called Secrets of Life Extension. Still probably the best single book for the breadth and scope that it undertakes in how to hopefully extend human lifespan. It's time for you to write another one, John, and bring us all up to date.
Great.
Excellent. That's the first right.
Difficult to overtake left-hand drive as well.
Yeah, that's right.
When the passenger screams, you pull back in.
Yeah.
Do we get a copy of this video?
Yeah.
Or do?
Yeah, you see Brian Micklethwaite and Chris Tame again.
I don't know, I've only got a fake picture of Chris, I haven't seen him for years. He was wearing a...
We went to
black
William.
with-
Great.
Right.
Okay, now.
Markets his own range of business. Wrestling.
Yeah.
And they are quite good actually. There's some of their reports where they call it the cutting edge, or whatever they call it, as well.
Yeah.
And they actually do pick up on stuff that we've been
Well, what
reading about
about
only a
it?
few months
Water?
before, so they're really watching
Yeah.
what's coming off the laboratory bench, as it were.
Right.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Mind you, it's run by the same people that do Omni magazine,
Yeah.
and that's run by Bucconi and Keaton, and they are...
Yeah. So you're meant to eat slowly, is that what you said?
Well, no,
Get your
Wolf was
calories.
saying you ought to aim at whatever, how many hundred calories you want over a week.
Yeah.
And you slowly reduce them, but you take a vitamin tablet to make sure you're getting all the nutrition.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is basically the longer it takes you to eat your allocated number of calories, the longer you'll live. It's just a defence mechanism, but called.
Sort of self-destruct, essentially.
Nobody knows. I mean, obviously some of the damage occurs by what we eat.
Yes.
Some of the damage occurs by the fact we breathe in oxygen, which is
Yeah.
poisonous. But
Yeah.
without it, it's even more poisonous.
Isn't it very good?
But nobody knows what really switches it on. There's a theory that there's an aging clock somewhere in the brain,
Right.
the glands,
Right.
that either puts something out or stops putting something out,
Yeah.
that causes debilitation to set in.
Right.
And it begins when it goes up to puberty, some of those signs of aging.
Yeah.
And they accelerate. I mean, as you go past middle age, all these things start to accelerate.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you look at a flower, it grows, it looks beautiful, it
Yeah.
produces seed,